I keep hearing the name Terry Mack pop up.
Okay.
Do you want to talk to me about Terry Mack? Because,
What do you want to
well, I
know?
want to know firstly who he is, who he was.
All right.
I think if we can, we have to include Brendan within it as
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
you know?
I mean, I didn't know Brendan, so I left Terry. Um, I had 3 amazing years with Terry. Amazing, so much fun. Loved the fella. Last year was tough. Uh, Anyone who says Terry is this beautiful, warm, lovely human being, they don't know Terry well. All right, they just don't. Terry had 2 sides to him, and as your mate, there is no one better. But friendship was on his terms, and if it wasn't on his terms, he was a hard bastard. Yeah. And so 3 amazing years. When I left him, it was hard work. And sadly, our relationship basically ended. And it was at the time where the boys were just coming through. And so I never had the relationship that you had. But I also know the boys came through Calmars, didn't they?
They did, and I think to continue with what Alex was saying there, Terry probably and the relationship probably ended in that way because I suspect in fact, I know Terry felt the exact same way as Richard. Absolutely heartbroken to not have Alex with them anymore. And I've got a weird thing with friends where they'll often criticise each other before we throw forward a
Yeah.
compliment. So I feel like criticising Alex and telling you a messed up story about him before I compliment him, right? But yeah, that was very much the case with Richard. He was absolutely heartbroken to see Alex go, and I think, and in fact, again, I know that would have been the case with Terry. And
Can
why?
I jump in again?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know that. And about 2 years passed, and then I went to Terry's office. And the thing is, the sad story, and I'm sure you'll cover it in some way, but Terry sadly died. He got stabbed in his own office, and Brendan died. Um, I was with Terry when he secured those offices,
Mm.
and they were shell and core, and we walked around,
Yeah,
designed the fit out, got my own office designed. That that office, the whole space is a foundation of my life. Yeah, and Terry was a foundation of my life, and hopefully, I'm gonna get to know Miles. As I said, I stayed away from him, but he's actually connected on me on LinkedIn quite recently. So at some point, Miles, I'd like to sit with you and chat to you. And there was a family there. You had myself, Richard Washington Young, Savas Socrates, and Sam Seller. And before we came here today, we all just had a lunch just to basically celebrate Terry for the good and the bad. And then I've come onto this meeting. So I'd love to chat to Miles about what an
mm.
amazing, special man he was with a huge amount of flaws. And I think we can have a real conversation with Miles about it because, that's his dad. And I'm sure his Miles saw some of those flaws as well.
Yeah,
Okay. Where,
yeah.
so, I've seen stuff on LinkedIn with people, what a beautiful human being. And it's like, yeah, you didn't know him. Yeah. Because if you
Would he
met
would he would he have liked you to talk about him in
Yeah,
this
I'm
way?
sure he would because I mean Terry never lost his Hackney edge. If you didn't know he
Oh,
was a property developer, is this a gangster I'm talking to, or is this a property man you just didn't know? And Terry liked to have that air of menace about him, but could be the most generous, warm human being ever, and would do anything for you if he loved you. So special man.
Not to throw any labels, but was it almost sort of like bipolar like?
Yeah, yeah, to a point, but there were triggers to make him go the other way. Terry's nemesis in my opinion, was a little bit alcohol, and he was definitely carrying some sort of dark passenger with him because when he got pissed, there would be other side. You'd see other sides to his character, but in terms of talent and seeing an angle
wow.
and working an opportunity. And anything that Galliard built
Mm.
south of the river, Terry was the man instrumental behind the scenes, bring it together. And there was stuff going on abroad. He saw every single angle, and his ability to work out what the angles were, who the characters were, what I need to cement to build this relationship. The way he built his team at that time, we were a special team. I remember walking into a boxing event, a charity boxing event somewhere in Chigwell, a hotel there,
Mm.
and we walked in and we're all in our tuxes, and you could see everyone turning around. Wow, I want to be part of that. They look
Really?
like a team, yeah, and we were a team. Yeah.
Deadly
Uh,
team.
yeah.
You
And
familiar with that team?
A serious force.
yeah.
Serious force. Made a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
money.
And then Lehman's happened, and
Yeah.
it was troublesome, and it all got a little bit. We just weren't doing property. We were like Dragon's Den from then onwards, and just trying to invent other ideas to keep busy.
I mean, it
And in
was
the end, I
literally
had
Dragon's Den, because Terry even backed Dragon's Den
yeah,
ideas.
yeah,
and had
absolutely,
one of
yeah,
his employees on Dragon's Den.
yeah. That was Fraser. Yeah,
Which,
Serious?
yeah.
I mean,
Fraser
it was so
replaced me.
notable
Yeah,
that his employee went on Dragon's Den, and Theopathetis, is that
yeah,
the chap's name? He said mid-pitch, he said, "You Terry McMillan's employee." You know,
yeah,
this was one of the dragons
yeah,
from BBC Dragon's Den,
No way.
yeah,
like clocking it halfway
yeah,
through a pitch.
yeah.
It's not often that happens.
Hang on. How do you know that?
So Terry was Millwall fan, or involved in Millwall. Theo
I mean,
was
it was
similar,
local.
Millwall. He was
Yeah,
very well known. He was incredible. And um, so Terry was the first client I ever met. And I have to try not to get too upset. You know,
yeah,
it's such a sad situation that
yeah.
happened with him. And I remember Terry being talked about around the dinner table for racial discrimination, for being racially exceptional, for being one of the few black people within the industry at that point in time. And he'd also come from a background of not deprivation, but
He was a
not
Hackney boy
affluence.
from the
He was a
street,
Hackney
basically.
boy.
Yeah,
He's a-
and then a postman.
And so when I met him, I think I was 20 years old. And this was around 2010. He'd made a lot of money. And I think we'd probably walked up Bermondsey Street, and Richard had spent half the time walking up Bermondsey Street going, "Terry owned that, Terry owned that, Terry owned that." I went halfway down the street. We've nearly covered most of Bermondsey Street, which, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of the most affluent streets in sort of London Bridge.
He got onto when the moment the Jubilee line was coming, he saw the angle and literally was buying everything on Bermondsey. And
Monopolising it.
Bermondsey Street literally had tumbleweed rolling down it at that moment. And
Yeah.
but there were loft style apartments there, and he was like, just buy.
Oh, some of the things I loved hearing about from Terry and my father would be, oh, so Terry bought that, and because of the state of the market, we sold all the flats shell and core, which means they had nothing apart from a kitchen sink,
If that.
enough to get a mortgage, right?
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
had to have a kitchen sink and a toilet. And so Terry would whack in a kitchen sink and a toilet, and they'd sell them shell and core for like, a couple of $100,000, which would now be a £2 million flat.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get to the top of the street, we sit down, we're having a cup of coffee, and Terry very quickly commences with how he started in property, which many people like Alex would have heard.
What's
this
your story? I'll tell you mine, but you go on.
Yeah. And Terry says to me, so I'm running around as a postman, as
Yeah.
Alex describes. I'm seeing a few people within industry. There's probably a few specific people that he sees. And he gets an idea to go to an auction and goes there with a credit card or a couple of credit cards, including potentially either his dad or his dad's credit card, pops his hand up at the auction for this lot, says, I'll take the warehouse, puts the 10% down on the credit cards, has no money to complete, right? And he says to me, I jump in my car outside of the auction house, and I'll quickly whip into the newsagent, and he buys as many beers as he can get his hands on. And he quickly nips into the next door shop, and he buys as many fish and chips as he can get his hands on. And my head, what do you mean? And then he loads it all up into the car and starts driving around the area, picking up homeless people, telling the homeless people, I've got drinks, I've got food, and I've got a place for you for the night. And then an hour later calls up the auction house and goes, I can't believe you've done this to me. I put money down in good faith. It's squatted up to here. There's squatters up to here. They've even got fish and chips and beers. You wouldn't believe it.
Genius.
I'm going to tell the papers. I'm going to tell... But maybe if I'm nice enough, if you give me a big enough discount and 6 months to complete, I might consider staying on the contract, And then he'd call up traders within the industry. He also had quite a few friends within the music industry, and he'd throw a few cheeky raves in there with
Yeah.
DJ Spoonie, who anybody knows DJ Spoonie was a big name at the time. Probably make a few quid out of these raves, you know, on a
Of course.
weekly basis, and then would flip it before the contract needed to be completed on to somebody else.
And you're at a time where the market was just moving up. So if you've got a delayed completion, you honestly, you don't need to be a genius. It will be worth more than when you secured it in the first place.
That is absolute genius.
Yeah.
Is that even illegal?
It's not
He liked to bend the rules. He liked to
said to me,
operate in
"You
those
couldn't
grey
do this
lines.
today,"
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I-
But he would lean on people. I mean, there'll be. I know he'll be in an auction room and he'll be chatting to someone very friendly. What are you bidding? He'll be, no, you're not. You know, and or if you are, you've got to look after me. You know, then he would. You know, and he probably would have never have backed it up, but he had enough menace around him.
Yeah.
He portrayed that. He loved having that menace. He portrayed that people, you know, he just hustled. He was a absolutely born and gifted hustler.
Oh, yeah. I sat there.
And you couldn't help but like him. So when I joined Calmars, you know, Richard Calmars, he's amazing. You've got to meet him. This is the character. Whenever there was a sort of entertainment thing, Terry was number one on the list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
What was the happiest Terry Mack ever made you?
I quite like a bit of humour. Twisted humour goes down well with me, right? In fact, somebody who's got that edge to them, who's that genuine, I find it incredibly endearing. And so I'm sure Terry would probably revel in me telling this story. But quite fast forward quite a few years after I've met him now, I realise now he's testing me. He chucks me I don't know, £1 million house or a couple of £1 million house and says, proper Cockney sort of, right, boy, here you are, go on, you get that one gone, you know, off you go.
Good impression?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Not Terry.
Anyway, he gets me on the case, and it's going really badly quite quickly. And he calls me into the office, and there's a lot of theatre with Terry, like Alex described. The office, which was an impressive office, had a 12-foot large bronze bull
Yeah.
in the foyer.
Like Merrill Lynch.
Like Merrill Lynch, I'm talking Scarface posters, you name it.
Was he sort of like Ari Gold like
Ari Gold.
from Entourage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big figure. And go back even further.
You're
You
right.
know,
It's a really good example.
The
Yeah.
Godfather,
Yeah.
you know, Scarface, those old school gangsters. He definitely watched and liked those a lot, you know. And as Alex was describing, like the Godfather, if you're part of the family, you are looked after. But if you're part of the enemies, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And anyway, he calls me into the office and has me absolutely bricking it and sweating, you know, buckets.
He would have known, by the way, and he'd be loving it.
I think, knowing now, right,
Yeah.
this means more to him than the deal.
Yeah.
He's messing about with something under the table, and I'm bricking it. I'm going, what's he going to do? He's told me these stories about being in real palavers, and I won't tell anymore, but you guys can probably guess the rest. And then all of a sudden, what? Bam! He whacks out this, like, as long as your arm, 3-foot long black dildo.
Yeah, I saw that deal though a couple of times.
Seb, you don't get this deal done. I think you know what might be happening on the next visit when you're called over to the office, don't you? And the grin on his face is like ear to ear. And that was the moment I walked out, and I was like, I really like this guy. He's messed up. He's got a sense of humour. He's about business. He's incredibly successful. And one of the questions that used to always be thrown to me as a young Kalmar and as I was starting in my career is, why don't your family develop? You guys get so many opportunities. You've got this like raft of sites in an area that lots of people aren't competing. Why don't you guys develop? And I thought, I haven't got the balls that Terry McMillan's got, Vince Goldstein, Stephen Conway. You know, these guys, not only like Alex said, they've got these visions. They see angles that other people go, ooh, I don't know. You know, when you're thinking about buying something, you start triple questioning it. most people do that. Terry wouldn't. Vince, I know they'd be humble enough to probably say, "Oh no, 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 I'm modest." Da, da, da. They, I remember
They're a talent.
not long ago showing Vince a church, and lots of other people had gone, "No, that's it." Vince went, "Oh, yeah, wicked, love it," just like that. And he'd see an angle, and he'd know. He'd make it simple, which is what most people that are excellent at what they do. They make it look really easy.
Mm.
And Terry did that. He'd look, he'd see something, and he'd see something, and then not only would he, the two things, he'd have the vision, and then he'd have the gonads to actually go for it as well.
Before we move on, what's the most valuable lesson that you learned from Terry McMillan's existence?
Tough question. I don't know if there is a specific lesson. The experience that he gave me, and a lot of experiences, some of this, we just can't put in the pod, but the network he gave me. When I left, he was on my case. You go and ring this guy, you ring that guy, I'm going to, fuck you up, basically.
Yeah.
And I left him alone. But that network, or my network grew. The likes, we just said Richard, Savas, Sam, those guys, Vince Goldstein, others, it gave me a network, it gave me an education. It taught me that you don't need to be, there's too many middle-class, white, conventional guys in this industry. And if you gave them a phone and a desk, go make some money, they wouldn't have a clue. They could write a fantastic report and get on with it and process, okay? You don't have to be like that. You can be different
Yeah.
and just be you and follow your entrepreneurship. And, and that's what he did. He loved the fact that he had that game and that edge, probably took it a little bit too far at times, but, and loved the fact that he was black. How impressive is that in
He's
this
very
industry?
proud of it.
Yeah,
incredibly
absolutely.
proud. Yeah.
Is that still? I can't
Yeah,
still be.
100%.
Is it really?
No, it's still a thing. Yeah,
Well,
it's a big baggage.
Going back to the elitism point, and your question's a fantastic one, Alex. You bring me to that was an immediately tangible thing you'd get with Terry. That the elitism was never
They
there.
don't
with
know
him.
black people. I know it sounds mad. They don't know. The lunch that I just had, Gareth Dominique was there. Black guy, successful, worked for Calmars for a while. Even did, I think it was like 6 months, or it might have been 6 weeks work experience with Terry. But you're in very well. He said it blew his brain. Finally, there was a successful, cool
Yeah.
black guy
Yeah.
doing it, making money, who you could look up to.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That the only reason black people succeed and are accepted in this white world, and I can say this, I don't know how many people know, but I've got black kids, and I can move those cultural barriers, is when you get black right, it's black cool. Yeah. And then you will, like being an attractive girl within the property industry, if you're attractive, you'll climb that ladder. Okay. So he had black cool, black edge. And so your typical middle class white wanted it carried a gravitational pull to be around him, and he knew it, he controlled it, and good for him.
It's almost like Pele.
Yeah. Pele is, even for somebody like myself who doesn't know much about football, clearly, in a class of his own. And for me, growing up with Terry being the first client I ever met and one of the most idolized people around the dinner table, he was very much like a Pele, and a fantastic idol in certain respects. Alex is, you're quite right, he's so brutally honest. Terry was a great idol for certain people in certain ways. He's also somebody that you shouldn't exemplify in lots of other ways because of his hustle, because of his graft. And so the beauty, your question was, what did you learn most about Terry? And one of the things, apart from not letting elitism get to you and the fact that you didn't go to Reading and whatever it may be, the fact that within business you can be ruthless, and that doesn't affect your ability to, within family and friendship, in a different stroke with the same person, absolutely adorn somebody and be ready to protect them, what was definitely something I learned from Terry. Because in business, he don't get on the wrong side of him. He'll get you. He will get the better of you.
Yeah.
He'll get the better of most. But then, as Alex describes, if you're a friend, it's completely different. It would, it'd be like flicking a light
And
switch.
if someone wronged you and you're his friend, he would go after them like,
Yeah,
yeah, he would go after them hard. Very loyal that way.
yeah. And so, I hope you don't mind me continuing that, but then carrying on with Brendan and Miles.
Yeah, sorry.
So Miles, it's quite a few years ago he started working for us, and with the legend that is Terry in all the forms we've discussed, was incredibly exciting for everybody within the office to meet Miles, get to know Miles, see what he's like. Probably similar to me, he's got the family name of as a bit of a shadow, and that probably helped or led to me having such a strong affiliation with him. And immediately on meeting him, the connection between the two of us was so strong. Um, Vastly different to his dad, vastly different, and incredibly intelligent, incredibly touching, personal, empathetic, and a fantastic product of the current generation. So to put it in context with Terry, who he was, and the generation that he was, that individual, that personality type was incredibly effective for the time and era that he was within his prime. But that approach, whether it's the warehouse transaction we talked about earlier, or whether it's the style of business, I feel has changed massively and transformed massively. We were talking about football earlier. I was really into basketball as a kid, and loved the recent documentary on Michael Jordan,
Last dance.
Last
Yeah,
Dance,
amazing.
right?
Yeah.
So I edified the guy, whether you're watching Space Jam or whether you like basketball. He was the god of
Yeah.
basketball at the time, right? And I didn't realize until watching that he was incredibly aggressive. He's a bully, like, and
Mentally ill.
you know, would grab his teammate, throw you up against the wall, square you up in the face, and scream. That for me, within now I'm a director, a manager, I care dearly about my team and nearly everybody that's worked for me. Naturally, I've had some fallouts with some people over the years, but my style of management and directorship is so vastly different to what Terry McMillan, Tony Pidgley, Michael Jordan, the 80s, 90s, the early 2000s eras encouraged.
Mm.
And Miles McMillan, what a fantastic individual in terms of adapting and being a modern, true gentleman. He learned a lot and still has a lot of his father's knowledge, vision, demeanor, way of conducting himself, business, but is so vastly different to his dad. So vastly different.
He'll carry a different baggage. Terry brought his baggage from the street and had that, but I doff my cap to Terry because boys were all amazing from everything I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So well done, Miles.
And Miles came into us. I think he started with resi lettings and then probably dabbled with a variety of different other property types, retail, industrial, maybe a bit of office as well. Oh, I can't help but tell a story about Miles, which Miles, you're going to kill me for this, but he's an absolute cracker. He then goes on from us to join a property developer, and me and Miles are getting quite into cars as young men and becoming fantastic friends, which we are still to this day. He gets a gig at a property development company, very successful property developer, and like lots of property developers, the head honcho's got a lovely car. In fact, the head honcho, when Miles McMillan joins this other company, has just got one of the country's first, I think it was a DB7, brand new Aston Martin, like an absolute beaut.
Have a little look.
Honestly. And
James Bond.
it's no, James Bond, that's DB5, isn't it? Yeah. DB7.
That is a
Maybe
cool car.
it was a DB10. It's a two-door. And I won't detract from the story. The story goes, boss says to Miles, I'm going to an event. I'm going to have a couple of drinks. can you drive the Aston for us? So that I don't get done drink driving. Miles is chuffed to bits as any young boy is. He's probably like 19, 20 years
Mm,
old. He's going to get to drive one of the first Astons of that
mm,
kind in the country. And rushes him and the boss to go and jump in the car. And the secretary, before they're going, hears this whole palaver and goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Is Miles, the young boy, even allowed to drive? Is he even insured on the car?
mm.
And the boss, of course he is. Da, 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 da. But she sorts out the insurance because she's like,
Yeah.
surely he's not allowed to drive it. Luckily, because after Miles drops off the boss, he goes for a quick spin, which boss approves of,
Uh,
hits a puddle, water pains, and crashes the first
Fuck.
DB11, DB10 of its kind in the country. Complete write-off.
Wow.
Wrote the car off.
Wrote the car off. And manages to keep the job somehow.
I remember, with Terry, I remember driving and he's driving his Aston. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. We're at some lights or we're parked somewhere. Someone walks by, mate, lovely car. And he goes, well, I'm just a driver. Then looks at me. I'm like, Terry, so cool. You know?
Not mine. I'm just a driver.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
he said.
What does
Yeah.
that mean?
No,
He's
that,
trying to
it
make
was
out
my
Alex
car and
owns
he's
it.
my chauffeur.
He's being humble.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cute.
Yeah.
yeah,
That is quite cute.
yeah. So Miles is vastly different to his father. And then Miles joins a development company, joins his dad after he was with us for a couple of years, I think. And Brendan, lucky enough to have Terry call us and say, would you be happy enough for Brendan, my second son, to come work for you? And we're chuffed to bits. But Brendan, such a difference to Miles. Miles is soft, empathetic,
Mm.
like really caring, lovely, real gentleman, proper gentleman.
Soft and pathetic.
Empathetic.
Um,
So twisted, aren't you,
yeah.
man?
You literally just went soft and pathetic.
No, soft, empathetic, and caring, and a gentleman.
Sorry,
right?
Miles.
Miles, empathetic. And Brendan, by contrast, is a playboy, right? He's a rugby boy, successful rugby player, really, really good rugby player, and basketball player, good at lots of sports. But yeah, I can't remember his first week. But he turns up like with pink hair, dyed his hair pink, and like real, playboy sort of stuff. Great fun, vastly a bit closer to what Terry was like, but again, a product of a modern generation. Um, Brendan's with us for a year or so, probably a bit less than Miles was before joining his father, and then quickly starts to learn the ropes with his father until the tragic event of late. Yeah.
Rest in peace to them both. Very, very sad. But great tributes, boys.